morning, good afternoon, good evening from wherever you are tuning in today. I know that we've got a global community, so please don't be shy. Feel free to pop in your location into the chat box. My name is Diana Lee. I'm based in London, and I am the Director of Research and Analysis at BOF Insights, which is the newest team at the Business of Fashion. Insights is the internal data unit and think tank at the company, and our mission is to be able to provide the intel that senior fashion and creative leaders need in order to make better business decisions. And I hope that many of you will have seen some of our prior reports, as well as tuned into some of our other BOF Lives on topics ranging from the future of fashion resale to understanding how Gen Zs engage with fashion. And today I'm super excited because we're presenting a snippet from our most recent report, which is titled The New Statement Shoe, Reimagining Designer Footwear. I am co-hosting the session alongside my colleague, Rawan Maki, who is one of my co-authors on this report, alongside our third co-author, who is Benjamin Schneider. And I am also very, very delighted to have our esteemed panelists with us today. I'm very delighted to introduce Rachel Makar, who is the Director of Accessories at StockX, as well as Giorgio Sarné, who is the CEO and Brand President at Stuart Weitzman. Welcome, Rachel, and welcome, Giorgio. Rachel, I would love it if you could actually kick us off by telling us a little bit about yourself and also about StockX, and then I'll ask Giorgio to do the same.
Yeah, absolutely. Hi, everyone. I'm Rachel Makar. I am the Director of Accessories at StockX, which is an online secondary marketplace for high demand consumer goods. So that includes sneakers, shoes, apparel, accessories, electronics, and collectibles. I've been at StockX for almost 4 years now. And in my role, I oversee the growth of our accessories category. That includes handbags and watches. And I also look after our luxury shoe category. That's it for me.
Thank you so much, Rachel. And Giorgio, tell us a little bit about yourself and Stuart Weitzman.
Yes, absolutely. Thank you, Diana. Good morning, good evening, good afternoon, everyone. My name is Giorgio Sarné. I am Italian. You will have no doubt about this during the call. I have been with Tapestry. Stuart Weitzman is part of Tapestry. I've been with Tapestry for almost 10 years. Stuart Weitzman since 2020. March 2020 to be more precise, exactly during the start of COVID. Stuart Weitzman is an unbelievable, beautiful American brand, New York based, born in 1986, a luxury player in the footwear world, a specialist. And probably, we are known for shoes like the 5050, the Nudist, and, some beautiful shoes that we have today as the SO family and the SO platforms. We have introduced the handbags recently, and just to terminate, I live in New York with 3 strong women at home, and so I'm learning a lot about shoes, speaking also with them. Thank you.
Perfect. Thank you so much. I'm now going to turn it over to my colleague, Rawan, to tell us a little bit about herself. She'll go over some of the logistical points for our audience and then take us through the agenda for today. So thank you, Rawan, and take it away.
Thank you, Dana, for the introduction, and thank you to everybody for tuning in to hear about our latest Insights report. A big welcome to everyone in the audience all around the world and to our 2 panelists, Rachel and Giorgio. To introduce myself, my name is Rawan Maki, and I'm the Associate Director of Research and Analysis here at BOF Insights, and I'm based in London. Before we get started, I'd like to quickly run through a little bit of admin. So if you have a question for the panelists, please submit that by clicking the Q&A button, and that's at the bottom toolbar of your Zoom window, and use that Q&A button, not the chat function, so that we catch the question. We might miss it if it's in the chat. Otherwise, please feel free to use the chat to share any comments, reactions, or anything else with the rest of the audience. And if you need any support during the event, please contact our customer support team, and that would be at events@businessoffashion.com. Our team is on standby throughout the event to help. So to begin, I'm going to take us through a brief presentation, and this is going to include a modified version of slides that show highlights from our latest report. And then we'll move on into the moderated portion of the conversation, and time permitting, hopefully we'll have a few minutes for an audience Q&A as well. To start our presentation, our most recent Insight Reports explores the world of designer shoes with a focus on high net worth consumer behavior in the US, UK, and China. And we're focused on these three countries because together they consist approximately 50% of the market. We define high net worth consumers as those with a median value of approximately 1.5 to 2 million in investable assets. And in the report, we deep dive into the palpable shift in designer shoes, where the category has historically had a very strong delineation between casual and formal, whereas, now with the pandemic, there has been an acceleration for the demand of multifunctional styles. And so this means shoes that are both formal and casual, as well as very high demand for comfortable styles. And now that we're emerging from the pandemic, customers are reluctant to give up that comfort. They're reluctant to give up the comfortable shoes they indulged in those years, but also they're gravitating towards standout and embellished designs that are really giving them a sense of reinvention. And we found that this convergence of versatility, comfort, and statement is really challenging designer shoe brands to expand their offering and to adapt to new trends. So our main takeaways from the report are fivefold. First, designer shoes are set to grow and by 5% in the next 5 years. In particular, the category is growing and has been growing and at an estimated rate that's exceeding its pre-pandemic growth. And second, the definition of formality, as I mentioned, is changing. And by that, what is considered formal is expanding to include more casual styles. Third, we found that shoes are in fact very important to customers. So we were able to measure this in two ways, which we'll get into shortly. And our fourth takeaway is that comfort is here to stay. And this is as an attribute that customers value in designer shoes. Lastly, we found that product novelty is key. And this is going on within the scope of house codes for brands. And these takeaways were powered by several data sources, such as a proprietary survey with high net worth individuals that we conducted with our data partner, Altient. We also conducted 20 plus interviews with brands and retailers, and we're very excited to have two of these companies represented here today with StockX and Stuart Weitzman. Additionally, we use third-party data, including market sizes and forecasts from Euromonitor International, data on pricing and assortment from global retail provider Edited, and we tracked style elements on the runway through fashion search engine Tagwalk. Now, looking at the market over the next 5 years, designer shoes will reach an estimated $40 billion, according to our data partner Euromonitor. This growth is expected to be driven largely by occasion dressing and also this desire for reinvention that is very palpable right now. This is also in line with other results that we found from our panel of high net worth individuals who said that they plan to increase their spend on shoes more than any other fashion category in the coming year. Now, when we look at long-term trends, and how they've impacted designer shoes, we see that casualization is a trend that predates the pandemic due to the entry of streetwear into the mainstream and a focus on wellness in the past decades. And within this ongoing evolution of designer shoes, this means that sneakers have been solidified within designer collections. So post-pandemic, this change has accelerated even further. So while people are returning to special occasions, they're looking for statement shoes that combine novelty and reinvention, but also comfort. And we see this in the popularity of the platform heel, for example, where customers today want that statement-making element of height. They want the chunky sole, the chunky platform. They want the large heel, but also they really want the extra stability and comfort that a platform shoe lends over something like a stiletto. And third, we found that shoes matter a whole lot to customers, as I mentioned earlier. So first, in our survey of high net worth individuals, customers actually ranked shoes as the second most important category, following only apparel in putting together an outfit. And this really speaks to the importance of shoes right now in the fashion zeitgeist. And second, we see in this graph displayed here that high net worth individuals also ranked shoes as the category where they are most likely to increase spending in the coming year. And fourth, we see and say that comfort is here to stay. So this is evident in sneakers becoming a staple of designer brands today. And this really means the inclusion of sneakers as a category in designer brands is no longer subversive. It's not alternative, but rather they have formally entered the category of luxury on a long-term scale. And designer brands are still innovating in the sneaker through different renditions and the way that they would have historically with dress shoes or heels in the past. And in particular, on this slide, we see designer brands taking inspiration from sportswear and performance shoe specialists on the design of their sneakers. And we also see other easy to wear styles. So that's not shown on the slide here, but we see styles like sandals, mules, and clogs really trending up on the runway in the past 2 years. So when we look at men's assortments, for example, and we did this analysis using data from our data partner Edited, we found that sandals, mules, and clogs are comprising around 13% of men's shoe offering. And this means that they've doubled in the past 2 years, which is a very, very big increase for specific styles of shoes. And so, this means it's not only sneakers that as a style have benefited from this desire for casualization and comfort, but also other easy wear styles. And lastly, as a result of these trends, we see brands are really being pushed to innovate within the realm of their house codes. And, we see this in the pressure from customers looking for both comfort and versatility after the pandemic. And this really requires some novelty in how brands are approaching design. So these results here are showing our high net worth individual panel. When we asked them in what way their attitude towards designer shoes has changed since the onset of the pandemic, you see that 72% said they now look for more comfortable shoes, and 63% said they are more likely to buy shoes that suit a variety of occasions or, versatile. And so in essence, this means brands need to continue to push boundaries and to react to these desires of novelty and comfort within their house codes. So, for the example of the tabby toe from Margiela or the red sole for Christian Louboutin, taking the latter, we see the red sole is very recognizable, moving from pumps to flip-flops and boots, and even more recently, the very recognizable Luby Shark sneaker as a comfortable staple as well. And these distinguishing features can really be a way for designer brands to innovate while still maintaining their house codes and a cohesive look and feel to their collections. And on that note, that's all the time we have for the presentation portion today. To learn more about the findings of our data and analysis on designer shoes, you can access the report by going to that link on screen, which is shop.businessoffashion.com. And now I'd like to turn it over to our panelists to hear their thoughts on what fashion needs to know at this moment about the designer shoe world.
All right, Rawan, thank you so much for that and for teeing up this portion of the conversation. So as our audience has just seen, designer shoes are extremely important to the space of high net worth individuals. And so I wanted to ask both Giorgio and Rachel about what is driving some of that momentum. So as we just saw from the slides, designer shoes are the category in which this segment of the population is most likely to want to increase their spend. So we'd love to hear about why shoes seem to be carrying that kind of importance. And so Giorgio, I'd like to start first with you.
Yes, thank you, Diana. Look, I have at least 2 points I want to mention about this. One, when you were showing your chart about all the different luxury categories, the first things that I thought, and it's not something new. When you look at jewelry, when you look at ready to wear, when you look at some of these luxurious products, they have an average price that is very often substantially higher than the one we have. So in reality, the shoes, they are still an accessible, luxurious category. It's not all, I would say, very accessible, but, you might have a lot of price points that are very interesting to access the category. The other thing is that the competition has created a lot of innovation. And then when you think about the innovation that is coming from traditional sport player, traditional luxury, and then traditional specialists as we are, we have really created, I believe, a lot of desire. We have really created a demand that was not existing before. And it's very interesting this because, we create this desire, but we offer a functionality that many other luxury products cannot offer. So you really love to wear a beautiful pair of shoes because you are comfortable, you stand strong, you feel powerful, and this is very important. I believe it's something we should not forget. So as industry, we need to innovate. If we innovate and we are creative, we'll create that desire, and people will come to us, and we will achieve great results. That's what we are trying to do as Stuart Weitzman every day, playing on the fit, playing on the comfort, working on our icons and shapes. So that's what I would say as first 2 points about this.
Those are some really interesting points. And I suppose I didn't think about, if a shoe is $500 or $1,000 of that being accessible, but it's all about relativity. And so if you're talking about handbags that are 3,000 plus, then perhaps a good way to buy into a brand is through the shoes. So thank you for raising that. And Rachel, I wanted to ask you, just because clearly it's been so fascinating that StockX has actually recently launched into women's luxury footwear. So would love to understand what was some of the impetus behind that. How does that tie into some of that consumer desire that we're seeing now for designer shoes?
Yeah, I think first it always starts with the customer. So we were seeing immense growth in our women's customers, not just women's silhouettes, but just women shopping on Stock in general. Today, more than a third of our customers are women. And then next, it really came down to demand. We were seeing demand across luxury brands in other categories like accessories and designer sneakers. So we knew there was the opportunity to expand into more luxury shoes. Then there was market need. We provide access. So just like hype sneaker releases, there's always that hot shoe of the season that you have to contact a personal shopper to track down, or a brand that retailers can't keep in store, kind of like Amina Muaddi, for example. So that access to the product combined with our rigorous verification process really solved some of those key market challenges. So we really knew that was an opportunity for us. And then even outside of that, we have a huge pool, global seller community. So with the current international price differences and the current exchange rates, we knew this was an opportunity for our international sellers to drive great pricing on our platform. So really just the demand for access to some of these hard to get styles was what drove us to add luxury shoes as an expansion category.
Thank you for that, Rachel. And just talking about the kind of, the hype shoes, or, what people have to have. Giorgio, I'd love to ask you just what sorts of styles are you really seeing within the portfolio that are really resonating with consumers today? So from the presentation that Rawan has just shown, we can kind of see that there's a simultaneous desire for comfort and statement. So I think in the past, it used to be much more about if you wanted to have beauty and power, you had to suffer for it. And now that doesn't seem to be necessarily the case. So we'd love for you to talk a little bit more about that point.
Yeah, absolutely. We are seeing exactly the same trends that you are seeing. I would say what the customers today want is everyday, sophisticated, and versatile shoes. They really want shoes that combine function and emotions at the same time. But function alone is not enough anymore. And there has been tremendous disruption in this industry, thanks to the innovation that a lot of mega brands, luxury players, they have brought. So what we need to do is really to continue with this trend of being very comfortable, providing the fit, the sizes, the widths, which is fundamental. We play on these beautiful categories. At the same time, you need really to combine the emotion. So what does it mean is that in our case, we have to think about some of our iconic products that have to cover occasion and functions that before they were not covering, and they have to fit from day to night. They have to stay with our customers from day to night. So they have to have maximum quality, maximum fit, craftsmanship. They have to be inclusive, in the way we think about the product, and they have to have the value. What we see with our customers is that when they buy the product, they want a product that lasts for a long time. And when they see that this product is lasting for a long time because there is the quality, they will come back because they trust the fit, the comfort of our shoes. So, I repeat what I said, you need everyday sophisticated and versatile styles, and being a specialist as we are with boots, booties, and other categories, what I call everyday essentials. But you also have to be with this set mindset and approach when you think about sneakers. You see how people are using sneakers, or you see how people are using other casual or dressy shoes. they want to have these shoes in different occasions of their life.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for that insightful answer, Giorgio. I mean, on the mention of the sneaker and just comfort in general as well, I wanted to ask, with pandemic closures behind us and, now hybrid life upon us. So, our feet are more in the world, not just always behind screens sometimes, but a lot of the times meeting in person as well. What do you think this means for the trajectory of the sneaker specifically? Do you see that other comfort styles might continue to trend in addition to the sneaker, or do you think really the levels that we're seeing the popularity of the sneaker at right now are here to stay?
So I will start, Rawan.
Yes, please, Giorgio.
Yes.
And then
Okay. Thank you. Look, I was thinking, we are discussing a lot about sneakers also, obviously, as Stuart Weitzman, and I was looking at a little bit at the history of sneakers. So apparently the first sneaker was created probably in 1860, something like that. And then they started to become popular probably in the early, at the beginning of the 20th century. So if you think about the sneakers, they have been there for 160 years or more. So it's clear a rubber sole sneaker was there for more than 160 years, and we can say the same for other categories. So I believe it's not about having a sneaker or something else. It's about making sure that you understand your customers and then you do something that please them emotionally and functionally. So you have to have a shoes that fit their needs or what they want, because you can create a lot of ideas. So I believe that sneakers will stay. There might be ups and downs depending, I believe, on the creativity and innovation that will come, but I have no doubt that they will stay. However, we see that there is a growth, and it's very good for brands like us, for casual or comfort beyond sneakers. And we are seeing this with loafers, we are seeing this with ballerinas, we are seeing this with flats, slippers. We are seeing this with many other categories. So this idea of fit, somebody call it casualization, but it's really, you use this for multiple occasions and you feel good when you use, will stay. And I think if we are creative, innovative, we can bring really a lot outside of the sneakers world. Maybe we'll play also in the sneakers world in a very nice way. So that's what we can do. And that there are a lot of great things that are happening with the heels, with the toe shape, with so many things in front of us. I think is very exciting.
That makes a lot of sense, Giorgio. And to just imagine in tandem, a lot of these styles leaning more towards comfort, but continuing to coexist. Rachel, I want to know, what are your thoughts on this question? I mean, what do you see as the future of the sneaker? And do you think other comfort styles are going to continue to trend or increase trending alongside the sneaker?
Yeah, definitely. I agree with a lot of what Giorgio said. Sneakers have been around for a very long time. They're definitely timeless, and I don't see them going away anytime soon. I think that comfort aligned brands and styles are going to be here for a long time as well. I think people are really embracing this wide range of options that they now have. I love that corporate America has embraced the sneaker. I remember when I started off in fashion, we couldn't wear sneakers to the office. And I love that that's now, part of the fashion world. I want to be able to own my Jordan 1s and my Stuart Weitzman nudist sandal because I have a reason for both of them. I remember there was a social media trend going around at the beginning of last year where people were taking pictures of a sneaker on one foot and a stiletto on the other foot because a girl really needs both. So I think that it's definitely here to stay. And even before launching women's luxury shoes on StockX, we had seen success in a lot of other non-sneaker brands on the platform. So we actually launched a separate shoes category to make it easier for shoppers to find their favorite non-sneaker footwear, which includes brands like Crocs and Birkenstock, which are both very big on comfort, as well as Timberland and Uggs just had like an amazing Q4. So I think sneakers and comfort adjacent brands are definitely here to stay.
I wanted to jump in here because I just also wanted to ask about the pricing point. So the very first thing that Giorgio had mentioned is that how shoes within a designer assortment tend to be a little bit more accessible than some of the other items like jewelry and ready to wear. So I wanted to ask about how specifically designer sneakers play into that, because that again is something that helps pull down the price point. So Rachel, would love to just hear your expert opinion on this.
Yeah, I totally agree with that statement that like the entry point into a designer brand, it usually starts with perfume, cosmetics, then sunglasses, then shoes. That's how I started when I started purchasing and collecting. So we definitely see that sneakers also can tend to be even more of an entry price point to some of the more elaborate runway styles or stilettos, some of those big fashion statements. And it also gives you the opportunity to wear them in casual settings and not always have to be dressed up and still participate in that fashion brand or the trend that brand is on at that time.
Perfect. Okay. Well, switching gears a little bit. So Giorgio and also Rachel, I've heard a couple times now the term being used of a shoe specialist. And so just for the benefit of us and also for our audience, I would really love it, Giorgio, if you could actually help us understand what distinguishes a shoe specialist like Stuart Weitzman from a multi-category brand like a Bottega Veneta or a Gucci that does also manufacture and sell shoes, but obviously does a whole lot of other things from handbags to ready to wear.
Yes, thank you. I believe, look, Diane, and to all of you, when if you have the chance to come with us, and you see what we do in Spain and the passion we put behind the shoes, the precision, the obsession for precision and passion we put in terms of the millimeter or the fraction of millimeter to make sure that the foot of the person is respected, is valorized, it's unbelievable. So what I believe distinguishes us is this passion for precision and the ability we have to understand our customers in an intimate way, in a way that I have to say other categories do not even allow to have, because we treat the foot of the person. We really touch something that is functional and makes you different during the day. If you stand well or you don't stand well, you will really feel it, pain, and then you will not feel good over the day. So you will not have the same strength and the same confidence that you should normally have. So I think this idea of comfort, fit, is extremely important for us. There is a lot of complexity around this. There is a lot of I would say efforts we put in terms of design to make sure that is not that is the fusion of this function and design that works together. And then again, the structure and the ecosystem we have created with our craftsmen to make sure that everything we do is in respect of these values is extremely important. So we are extremely focused on this. We are doing this in the best possible way. I hope the customers will recognize more and more, or are recognizing this, and that's, I believe, a big element of differentiation.
That makes a lot of sense just in terms of the human foot, and it's the anatomy that makes creating a shoe so much more technically challenging. So if I think about from a personal vantage point, I can wear a size small or a medium or a large in a shirt, but I really need a US size 7 shoe and I'm not going to settle for anything else. So that makes a lot of sense in terms of how shoe specialists lead with the shoe, whereas for perhaps a multi-category brand, they have to think about how the shoe fits into the rest of the portfolio. So perhaps there's a different balance there. So Rachel, I wanted to turn it over to you because you've got a very unique vantage point at StockX, where it's a platform. There are a lot of different kinds of brands that are available. And so I just wanted to ask, but does it seem like most consumers actually understand the difference of a shoe specialist versus a multi-category brand? And do they associate certain attributes with one versus the other?
Yeah, I think StockX has a very unique point of view because we are very driven by hype. So it's really about that specific hot product. And sometimes it can be very much fashion over function in that sense, because the StockX customer wants that hot shoe. Sometimes they're willing to flex on other things like comfort. So I think if it's really hype and of the moment, then they're not as focused on the backstory necessarily behind it. But that's very specific, I think, to StockX and how our customer and market works.
I mean, maybe Giorgio, I'll pass that question over to you just in terms of, do you think that consumers understand the difference between a specialist versus a multi-category brand? And how do you really make sure to educate the consumer about some of the benefits of coming to a shoe specialist? Or how do you differentiate yourself given that it is becoming such a increasingly complex and competitive landscape for shoes?
I believe they understand over time. They understand even more. I don't disagree at all with Rachel saying, you enter also because of emotions. You enter because of the design. But once you start to be passionate about shoes, you understand what is a good shoes versus what is not a good shoes. Then you don't go back. That's clear. And we see this in our stores every day, where our associates really celebrate the shoes and celebrate the fit and celebrate the comfort, the width, the narrows, the sizes. This what I call this inclusivity that really makes the people feel good. I have to say also, the more you spend time with the customers, the more you realize how important it is for them that the booth really fit in the right way, being under the knee, over the knee. They look at details that, when you scroll an internet site or, you look at shoes, at the beginning, you don't realize, but then when they start to try the shoes, enter in the shoes, there are details that surface, and that's where we pay a lot of attention. So I believe is like everything in life. The more you know, the more you want to know. And when you get the passion for those shoes, then it's going to be very difficult to go back. And this is what we see with our customers. When you speak about the 50-50, the Land family, or the Nudist, to speak about some of these icons, it's so beautiful to see that the customers, once they go with those products, the second repurchase is so easy. They don't even try. It's give me that color, that color, that color, that color. That's what they want.
That's really interesting. Thank you for that. And just because you mentioned inclusivity, I wanted to ask about, can you explain what exactly that means when it comes to size inclusivity for shoes? Are we seeing a lot of consumer demand for size inclusivity? And also, what are some of the implications on things like manufacturing? Because obviously accounting for more sizes or more complexity is introduced into things like your assortment.
Yeah. I think inclusivity is going to be more and more important. We as a company, we use a lot of data. We discuss a lot about the customer and what we are seeing. Let me say, the generation alpha will have no racial kind of majority when you look at the numbers. The generation alpha is going to be completely different from the generation X, the baby boomers, the Gen Z. So it's interesting to see that all the boundaries or limitation we had before will not exist anymore. So there will be a freedom that is fantastic. But you have to understand that in that case, there will be differences. There will be differences coming from Europe, from Asia, from Southeast Asia, from Africa. So there will be substantial differences, and inclusivity is not only when you look at the evolution of the morphology of people, the body of people, how people are evolving. If I look at the people of the young people today, they are different from what I was when I was at the same age. They are taller, they have a different foot. So we have to think about this thing. We have to think about sizes. We have to think about heel heights. We have to think about widths. We have to think about simply the way the foot is doing. When we speak about footwear and specialists, it's almost about like a science or engineering. The fraction of millimeter count, and we have to pay attention about all these things. So that's what.
Thank you for that. Rachel, I would love to ask you about inclusivity, because I think one of the beauties of sneakers is that it is just generally something that didn't necessarily have to break down so cleanly into male versus female, and sizing was just always comfort came first for sneakers. So what's your take on inclusivity?
Yeah, we still see this as something that consumers absolutely want, and it extends beyond luxury footwear, because in the sneaker world, sizing has always been a topic of frustration, specifically for women that want maybe a men's silhouette that's released and they don't have access to the full size run, or they don't have small enough sizes for women, and vice versa. Now women's silhouettes that are very popular, they might not go large enough into men's sizing so that men can participate. So this has always been a hot topic as well in sneakers. And I think that there's been a lot of progress made to offer broader size ranges for more popular releases, but there's still definitely room to grow. And then in my past life, I started off in buying shoes at Bergdorf's, and we usually found that once you do the size run, you get to buy very limited of like the size 34 and the size 42, and those would go very quickly or would be pre-ordered by specific clients. So this lack of access to some of those even specific sizes was also part of the reason why StockX introduced women's luxury shoes, because it's difficult for brands to produce many quantities in some of those sizes. It's also difficult for retailers to buy a large quantity in some of those sizes. So there's really a market gap there that StockX can help address as well.
Yeah, that's so interesting that you bring up your prior retail experience where you actually had to think about, how do you physically stock a sales floor as well? Because obviously with the benefit of the internet, you can have any variety of sizes, half sizes, different widths, but definitely there are more complications when you have to think about size inclusivity and bringing that into the real world as well. So that's another interesting perspective that you're adding. So thank you for that. Giorgio, I wanted to ask you about something that you mentioned at the very beginning in the introduction where you talked about Stuart Weitzman going into handbags. So that is a relatively recent announcement that was made at the end of last year. And so I wanted to ask as well, just where does Stuart Weitzman really see handbags fitting within the portfolio? And so that kind of brings Stuart Weitzman perhaps a little bit closer into those multi-category brands, but without losing focus on, your specialty as a shoemaker as well.
First, Diana will never stop doing shoes. That's clear. We'll shoes at our core, and it's very important that we'll continue with that. For us, Stuart Weitzman is almost for us as Stuart Weitzman, we see bags as almost an innovation center where we can use what is our DNA, our codes, our element of differentiation. The ability to do amazing stretch boots, so the stretch ideas, and apply these ideas to other categories. We will not obviously compromise on quality. We will not compromise on the core value of passion for precision. These core values that are at the center of what we do. And we see that there is a clear demand for more products in our stores. The people want shoes, but then very often say, okay, how can I match these shoes with the right handbags? How can I match these shoes with the right product? And that's where we feel that there is the people are asking for styling advice, and that's where we see an opportunity to give them something that is satisfying their real strong request for fashion and styling advices. And so that's where we see. But please don't worry, we'll do a lot of shoes. We'll continue a lot of shoes, and we'll continue to satisfy people that needs big sizes, small sizes, and that's what we do very well.
That's such an exciting direction to see, and it makes sense to have that offering to style the whole look. I wanted to circle back, Rachel, to something that you said earlier as well about hype, and how, sometimes from your vantage point, you've seen how fashion overtakes function. So I wanted to ask what you see as the key drivers or determinants for hype today when it comes to shoes. Is it things like collaborations or limited editions? Because we also hear of this drop fatigue and people kind of being unable to keep up. So we really kind of would love to pick your brain on where does hype come from in the shoe universe?
Yeah, I think scarcity is definitely a key factor, but when it comes to collaborations have been around in fashion history for actually a very long time. Today, it does feel like there's a lot of them and we're starting to feel a little fatigued. So I think it's really important for brands to be very thoughtful about their collaborations. So I think consumers want new collaborations, but these partnerships really need to tell a story. It can't just be, slapping a logo, both of your logos on an item. It has to be a lot more than that. We know that the right collaboration can really bring one consumer's customers together with another, and it allows you to stay top of mind in the press, etc. But you really have to tell more of a story behind the design of that shoe and what kind of thought went into that, and how it was made, etc. So I think collaborations are still key, and they're important, and they're a driver as long as there's some more meaning behind it.
It makes a lot of sense. And do you see, social media or specific social media platforms being part of this hype culture? Or is it more so, across all platforms equally?
I think on a personal level, TikTok is just really increasing the speed of the trend cycle. Like, we're seeing certain hype shoes be talked about, 1 week, and then the next week it's another shoe. We saw that, on StockX with our specific shoes performance. The Hermes Oran sandals and the new Ship sandals were really trending on TikTok. They were doing well on StockX, even like the Prada monolith loafers, etc. So yeah, I think especially TikTok is really speeding up that trend cycle and, talking about hype products.
And do you think that's an organic offshoot of, creators taking that into their own hands, or are brands also intentionally getting in there and working on creating that hype in a place like TikTok?
I think it's both, but with creators, it's more authentic. And I think brands have to be careful when they're sort of trying to force it, because it has to feel very real and authentic when they do, especially with video, when you can see the person trying it on or styling it with an outfit, you can tell whether it's real or not. So I think video also makes it more vibrant than just seeing photos on Instagram. So I think that's also why we see TikTok kind of shifting that landscape a little.
So interesting to think of the video format as well, and what it means for hype culture and things going viral today. So I wanted to zoom out a little bit and ask both of you if you had any concluding tips or advice that you would give, for brands or retailers to really stand out in today's quite saturated and complex landscape for designer shoes. Giorgio, maybe we can start with you.
Yes, really, what I repeat every day, here in this company is we really need to stay focused on our DNA, on our codes, on our history, on the relationship we have with our customers. Obviously, we want to acquire new customers. That's why we are here. But we need to acquire with that idea in mind that we will respect and we will do everything to amplify our strengths. The other thing, when I think about retailers, and this is big retailers, small retailers, it's probably a rule that we should all apply. I think we should avoid distractions. You have to stick with what you think are the few good brands that provide the right quality for a long time. I see a lot of people that come and go or try and miss, and then this is a distraction that sometimes is very heavy and is disrupting in a not positive way the industry. So this would be my few words for us and for the retailers.
And how do you determine the distractions from the real long-term trends? I think that's the big question.
That's the big. But again, I believe if you focus on the right, on the right products, the iconic products, and then you reinterpret this iconic product, you can always make sure that you stay true to yourself by following these trends. If you try to be everything for everybody, that's become a big distraction, and you get lost.
Yeah. That makes a lot of sense. Rachel, any thoughts or concluding tips for brands and retailers today?
Yeah, I think we keep hearing a lot about like storytelling, and I think that is really important and kind of speaks to what Giorgio is talking about too, like the history of some of these iconic designs and, why you're bringing them back and what goes into them. But as a consumer as well, with price points at an all-time high. I want more of a look behind the curtain of what's going on in the design process, what's going on in the production. Like even seeing videos, for example, of like these things being made makes me much more willing to spend my money on them. And I, as a collector as well, love the history behind certain styles. So I really think a lot more storytelling around quality and the history, like fashion history in general, is really going to help consumers make that purchase.
Yeah.
Rachel, I wanted to jump in quickly because when you talked about the launch of StockX's luxury women's footwear division, you mentioned some of the hot brands that were really spiking, and you mentioned Amina Muaddi and Match and Match as an example. So could you help us understand how some of these new entrants are using these tools, whether that's social media or that storytelling, in order to kind of be able to be so successful against some of the incumbent brands?
Yeah, I think a lot of it has to do with like social media and cultural cachet as well. And like celebrity and influencer adjacencies, those are really feeding the hype machine. So, you know, back in the day, we used to see celebrities wearing certain styles in the tabloids, et cetera. Now it's all over social media. But I still think it's like heavily driven by celebrity and influencer, like telling us what the latest trends are and sort of, you know, making customers go crazy to track that down. And then, of course, when there's scarcity combined with that, it kind of, you know, makes the machine run even faster.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I mean, I think scarcity is just something that's valued across categories in the fashion world, but it seems like for shoes specifically, it's such a big one. With a little bit of time left, let's proceed now to the audience Q&A. So we're going to invite some of our audience members on screen to ask their questions to our panel. Just keep in mind, there might be a bit of a delay as we wait for them to come on screen. So we have the first question from Laura in Dublin. I believe she's on with us right now.
Hi there. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Hi,
Laura.
Hello.
Very interesting talk, everyone. What I'd love to ask is, do you find in trends within the footwear industry, especially current trends, that it is easy for a smaller, very independent label to break into the market, or generally do luxury consumers invest more in established brands and fashion houses?
I believe it's possible, Laura. There have been amazing successes in the past 5 to 10 years. So yes, I believe it's possible. It's not easy. It's not easy when you want to reach a certain level of sales and results, but absolutely, I believe it's possible. And the creativity that some of these young designers or new designers have brought is unbelievable. You know, the respect we have for these people is very high. And yes, it's possible. It's costly, but absolutely yes.
Thank you.
Yeah, I think going back to social media again, now more than ever, these small brands have the opportunity to sort of break out using, you know, marketing tactics that don't cost as much, because you can go viral for free. So I think if you have the talent and you have the right product, it's definitely possible. And I think also it would be great for some of those larger heritage luxury brands to partner with some of those younger brands that they see emerging, and, you know, help giving them the platform to shine and bring that is another way to bring excitement to both brands. So again, thoughtful collaborations between some of those bigger luxury houses and smaller brands would be awesome to see.
Thank you. Very insightful.
Thank you for coming on, Laura, to ask that question. I actually am also seeing some questions from the audience that I'm going to pick out and ask, just because I think they're very good questions. But one of them is, you know, how do you see technology right now changing, if in any way, and you know, the production of shoes? And do you think that this is as fast as kind of some of the hype around it would make us believe? Giorgio, I'll start with you, if that's okay.
Yes, I think technology is bringing a lot of speed, a lot of creativity again, and the ability to look at things from a different perspective, I think is influencing both the way we look at shoes, but also the way we understand the customer. The ability we have now to follow the customer, speak with them, and have the right data that will be used obviously to make sure that we provide them with the right products and inspire them is fantastic. So technology is helping us to understand better the customer, go faster, and then give them much more freedom to choose, to compare, and convenience. So we are seeing this every day, and this is also a trend that will not stop.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Super valuable insight, Giorgio. And I mean, to build on that, Rachel, I was going to ask from, your vantage point, do you think that this is something that interests the customer? I mean, is it drop worthy to have kind of a new technology or something that drives the story behind shoes, or is that not really one of the drivers that motivates customers' interest in a specific style of shoe?
I think technology can definitely drive interest and make product more noteworthy as long as it's, valuable, and again, that the brand can tell that story. And I think outside of production itself, using technology to sell the shoes, like we talked about, video is super important. Having more videos on your PDPs and letting the customer see the shoe on foot. From a buying background and the wholesale background, we see the shoe on the model before we make the purchase. So I think not just seeing it in pictures, but using more video to show that off is also really important.
That makes a lot of sense. And I mean, and do you think that sustainability is also part of that, desire of what customers want to see, whether it's in the technology or materials? Is that something palpable within the shoe industry, say, the way that it is in other parts of the fashion industry?
Yeah, I think so. I think that the younger generations are very passionate about sustainability. And so same as technology, as long as it's done correctly and there is, a good story and reason behind it, and you can really speak to it and why it matters, then I think it's important to our consumers.
Great. I'm just seeing if there's any more audience questions. I think that we have answered the majority of them.
Oh, there was a good one that I liked from the audience about so this is a question around dupes, essentially. So how do brands attract consumers to buy their shoes at a more expensive price when they can buy similar shoes at a lower price? And so, George, I feel like this might be a good question to direct first towards you, and then to see if Rachel has any thing that she'd like to add as well.
Yes, thank you. I think the first thing that comes to my mind when I think about this is all the things I said before about quality, craftsmanship, but also the experiences that you provide. Don't forget that there are a lot of emotions, not only in the products, but also emotions, in the exchanges you can have, both in the physical world or in the virtual world. We sell shoes online, and we understand how important is that relationship between a sales associate that can call the customer once I've started the acquisition, the purchases online, to have somebody that can understand what she wants, so she makes the right choice. And this can happen via a phone call, via chat, via the computer. So that's omni-channel experience. Omni experience is very important. Then when you go to the store, I can tell you that simply the fact that you sit in a store, you can exchange with people, you can see multiple things at the same time, you can style, you can see how the products look on you is extremely important. It's not about pricing, it's about the product you provide, the experiences you provide, and the overall environment. So we are seeing this everywhere. Luxuries around us. The big chains are doing fantastic. The big operators. The more we provide the right experiences with product and through experiences and services, the more we can sustain prices at the right level.
Yeah, and same question for Rachel, but almost with a slightly different angle, because obviously with StockX, authenticity is such an important thing. So how do you kind of balance the hype versus kind of the desire for someone just to kind of get that fashion shoe at a dupe rather than going to someplace like a StockX in order to get their hands on something?
Yeah, I mean, I completely agree with what Giorgio said. First and foremost, it's about the quality and craftsmanship and owning something that you can sort of like pass down in your family, even if it's used and worn. We're still buying vintage styles today, but it's also, I think, about wanting to buy into that brand, knowing about the history or feeling very aligned with that brand and really wanting to participate versus just, buying a dupe. I think you want to be a part of it. And in that sense, authenticity is very important.
All right, fantastic. Okay, well, it looks like we're getting close to time. So now I'm going to kick off a big round of thank yous. So first off, thank you to the BOF events team for making this possible in the first place. And of course, thank you very much to Rachel and to Giorgio for the awesome energy that you brought to the table today, and also for the really interesting insights that you've been able to draw out. And of course, a big final thank you to our audience today. Thank you for keeping the chat very active and for these awesome questions at the end as well. So those have been quite fun to parse through and also bring up into the forefront. And so if you found this as enjoyable, or you'd like to learn more about our report, then I would highly encourage you to visit our website at shop.businessoffashion.com. And of course, to tune in to future BOF Lives by checking our events calendar. So with that, we're all going to sign off and have a wonderful day ahead, and we will see you next time.